Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. I am Alicia, your host, and today I'm going to guide you through 3 arpeggio exercises, but we're not doing isolated arpeggios the way we typically do when we're working on our technique. We are going to be working on arpeggios within the context of famous, beautiful pieces. I've gone ahead and simplified these pieces so that you can approach them if you're a relative beginner, but you probably will have wanted to play piano for at least a couple years before attempting these. The 3 well-known pieces that we're going to be looking at are going to be done in order of difficulty, but the first one's the most approachable. We're going to be looking at Edvard Grieg's lyric pieces, the very first one called Arietta, and then we're going to be taking, some of you might be familiar with that one. It's a little less famous, but since it's a grade 6 level one, I thought it was the kind of closest to being the most approachable. Then we have Debussy's Clair de Lune, which pretty much everyone knows, piano player or not. That's a grade 10 level piece, but again, we're simplifying it by cutting it in 2 different parts. And then finally, we've got Liszt's Lieberstraum number 3, a very famous melody, and an ARCT level, so diploma level, very difficult piece, again, divided between the hands. If you're completely new to the idea of arpeggios, I do have beginner videos on arpeggios, and I will link those below. But what is an arpeggio? An arpeggio is basically just a chord that's spread either between the hands or just a wider stretch in one hand. So the thing that differentiates an arpeggio from a chord, or a broken chord, is a broken chord pattern typically only moves through 3 notes of the chord. So C chord, C, E, G, whereas an arpeggio is often going to include the top note. So it's going to be C, E, G, and then C on top. So you got a bigger spread. They're very similar to broken chords otherwise. One thing that I think is really fun about these, and we'll get to them in just a minute, is I've separated them into duet parts. Now, each excerpt is quite short, so we're not doing the full piece for any of these, but it's enough to get a little bit of a taste and a little bit of an exercise. Now, we have a primo and a secondo, so we have a melody part, so piano player 1 on piano 1 might do that, and then we have a secondo, which is the arpeggio stuff, and that would be piano 2. Now, I assume for most of you, there's just one of you out there who is going to be practicing these pieces, but what I think is super fun, and what I would encourage you to try, is record yourself playing either the primo or secondo, and then play along to your own recording. So you can have the experience of doing a duet with yourself. And what this will give you, in addition to just the kind of fun activity of learning arpeggios in context, is you're going to get to hear what it would actually sound like if you were doing the full piece. Because what this basically is are all the notes that would be required in the full performance of the piece. So in the example of Clair de Lune by Debussy, we've got a grade 10 level piece, and basically the notes spread between 2 hands for an easier performance. If you were doing the grade 10 version, you would do all of those notes in just your 2 hands. So we're simplifying it in that way. But if you do the duet with yourself against your own recording, you'll be able to hear what the full arrangement might sound like, which is really satisfying to practice. So let's go take a look at how to do those. All right, so our first little excerpt is Grieg's famous melody, or somewhat famous Arietta, which goes something like this. If we're just isolating the melody a little bit out of context without those beautiful arpeggios to fill in the gap. So let's take a look at the arpeggios and how they spread between the hands. One thing you might find useful to do on your own time is to figure out what chords you're actually playing. Some of them are kind of interesting. You'll need a little bit of chord background on that, and that's something that I go through a lot in my complete piano classes. So if we take a look at the first one, we're basically doing an E flat major chord with the octave. So again, arpeggios tend to spread a full octave. If I were to do it with just the single hand, I'm just playing through the notes of the E flat major chord again with, and then adding an octave note at the end. So split between the hands, it's a little easier to play. And you're gonna have to deal with some really awkward note reading with a C flat. And then we sit with this. Again, we have a full octave. You can hear how this is an arpeggio that's split between the hands because we go from a B on the bottom to a B on the top. So our spread is an octave and then back to where we start. We've got some little twists and turns. Some building up in the left hand. and the outer notes stay the same, but it's the outer edge notes stay the same. We're staying on the G octave, but the notes in the middle change along the way. And just to let you know, if you've been playing long enough to understand what syncopated pedal is, most of you who've been playing for a couple years know that already. I do have a video on syncopated pedal, but just to let you know, that's how I'm pedaling this. Now, if you were to do something like record yourself playing the arpeggio parts in addition to playing the melody, setting the metronome tempo, let's say at 80 beats per minute, or whatever beats per minute makes sense to you, and follow along with that, then it'll sound really nice and rich and full. But I'll let that be a surprise for you. Okay, Clair de Lune. So again, we have a Primo Secondo. The Primo, the melody is in the Primo. Now this is a little bit more of a difficult excerpt to play because we have harmonic intervals to deal with. But if you're doing the Primo, you're basically just doing bass notes. Something like that. Now, again, where we get to the good stuff, where we get to the arpeggios, we've got a little bit of a different style of one in this case. We have a 1-5-8 type arpeggio. So we're going to split it between the hands again. It's the same idea, but now it's going to be a much bigger spread. So we have a 1, 5, 8. So I'm going from D to A to D, doing a full octave in just the left hand alone. So you can already see how that's wider. And then playing the notes of an inverted D flat major chord all together, we get something like this. It's really beautiful, isn't it? And then we move to a new chord. We've got an F minor little arrangement, but you'll notice the left hand patterns are very similar here, with a slight variation going into the last chord. You can see now we have an E major chord, and back to D flat major, and then back to our E major chord. And then kind of the same deal. I think it just gets a little bit more loose and free-flowing where we use the notes of the arpeggio that we've been doing. So here are the notes that we've been playing as our D flat major arpeggio. We're going to just play these notes and just change up the order. Watch how we do this in the third measure. So all of them were the arpeggio notes. The only difference is my right hand actually went up the full octave on its own. You can see that's a big increase in difficulty compared to the first exercise. 1, 2, 3, 5. I pop over the top, a little crossover, but I'm doing nothing but hitting the same tones of the D flat major chord. And then we're going to do the same thing with an E flat major chord. Again, octave spread in the left, octave spread in the right. And then we're just going to be dabbling with all of those notes kind of just ascending upwards and down like a wave. All right, and finally we've got Lieberstraum number 3 by Liszt, very famous tune. You can hear the melody actually sounds very strange and lonely on its own, but something like this. Well-known melody. Again, the Primo is just going to be the simpler parts where we're playing the melody and some bass notes. And then where we get the fun stuff, the arpeggio stuff, is split between the hands. And one of the fun challenges of this version is now, instead of just doing purely an arpeggio split between the hands, the melody is interwoven into our arpeggio pattern. So you can hear the funky note there. Anyways, it's not an exact replica. You're not going to be playing every single melody note in the bass, but we're dabbling with it a little bit as a way to sort of bridge our ability to play cross-hand arpeggios while not just being harmonic, we're including a little bit of a melodic element in it as well. And when we hear these parts go together, again, it's going to be a really beautiful effect. So the only way you're going to hear these parts move together, sorry about that, the only way really nice, rich A-flat major chords. But the only way that you're going to hear what it would sound like is, well, you can listen to the original recording and you'll get a sense of it. But layer on your own recordings. I think the easiest way to do this with all of the examples is to start with the secondo, because the secondo is the harmonic backdrop of the entire piece. The arpeggio patterns give us a nice beat to anchor to, and then you can play your melody on top of that as a way to hear what it would sound like if you were doing the full version, the grade 6 or grade 10 or ARCT version of the piece. I just want to remind you again that the downloads, the MuseScore file, as well as the PDF that you can print off and play on your own time are available for free below. I don't require any hoops to jump through to access them. You can just download them and use them at your leisure. I hope you enjoy that. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments below if you give them a try and how they go for you. And if you have some challenges that you encounter or any revelations that you have along the way, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to see in the comments what's going on with your experience. On the other side of this lens, I don't want you to just watch these videos. I want you to play them. I want you to interact with them and engage with them on your own time at your practice bench, but then come back and tell me how it's going for you. All right, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.